Hey there, kids. This is lesson 3.1 on Reveal Math. Let's take a look at it together. Today's lesson has you doing some estimation, and they give you two different ways to do it. One is with rounding. The other one is using front-end estimation. Uh, Front-end estimation is easier. Rounding is more accurate. So let's talk about that. So it says here, use estimation strategies to check if your exact answer is reasonable. A town has $4,000. Do they have enough to buy fireworks for $1,253 and cotton candy for $2,898? Well, in this example right here, they give you two different ways of doing it. One is with rounding, okay? And they say round to the nearest hundred. Well, the 2 is in the hundreds digit here, and you look to the right and there's a 5. And so we're going to raise this 2 up to a 3, so it becomes 1,300. And over here we have 2,898. We look at this 8 and we look to the right and there's a 9, and we can bump this one up to a 9 because if it's 5 or more, we round up, and this becomes 2,900. And 1,300 plus 2,900 equals 4,200. Now, an easier way of doing this, but a less accurate way, would be just to do front-end estimation. 1,253 is very close to 1,000. 2,898 is very close to, well, I would call this 3,000, but they called it 2,000 because they're just looking at the front ends here, okay? 1,000 plus 2,000 is 3,000. Okay, well, the actual answer here is 4,151, and of course, the rounding is more accurate right here. This one right here was very close to 3,000. They called it 2,000, so you were a long way off from the actual numbers. So the actual cost was 4,151, and rounding to the nearest hundred is the most reasonable estimation. Now, when you're doing rounding, there's exact rules to it, but when you're using front-end estimation or any estimation, there's no rules to it. You just have to be close, okay? So kids, right now you're learning how to estimate sums and differences. Let's do a couple together. All right, in the lesson, it says this. It says, how can you estimate the sum or difference? Explain your strategy. Well, when you're talking about, once again, if you're talking about estimating, there's not exact rules to it. If they were to say to round it, then you have exact rules. So me, I just kind of eyeball this right here. This is 12,258. To me, that's not so far away from 12,000. Okay? So I'm going to call that 12,000. Now this is 14,926. Okay? Well, isn't that pretty close to 15,000? So I'm kind of doing both. I'm kind of like rounding and using front-end estimation. So 15,000. Okay, if we were to add these together, 12 and 15, that's 27. So my guess is 27,000. Okay, that's my estimation right there. Now, if you wanted to know, you could go get a calculator and you could find the exact answer. The exact answer comes out to be 27,184. So that right there is not so far off. That's pretty good. Let's take a look at the second one right here. It says 5,246 subtract or minus 392. Well, once again, let's call this is pretty close to 5,000, okay? If we were rounding, and we're not rounding exactly, we're just kind of estimating. And then take away 392. Well, that's pretty close to 400, isn't it? Okay. Now, we have 5,000, take away 400. Well, that comes out to 4,600. Whoops, there we go. 4,600. Okay. Now, the real answer is 4,854. And so this is kind of close, okay? It's not a bad estimate. When you're doing estimates, you're just trying to see if you're in the ballpark, if you're close to the answer. Now, in the book today, we had you doing this right here. It said, estimate, and then use a calculator to find the actual sum or difference, okay? And so let's just do a couple of these right here. It says to estimate and then find your actual answer. Well, for me, I still like doing estimating over rounding, okay? And this says 749, and so geez, that's kind of in the middle, but was closer to 700, barely. And this is 2,810. I like to call that 3,000 because that's not so far away, right? And now we just add them together. 700 plus 3,000. So my estimate right here is 3,700. Okay. Now you can get a calculator and you can find the actual answer. Now the actual answer with a calculator is 3,559. Yeah, not so far off. Okay, you're like a little more than 100 off right there, so that's not so bad. And you could do the same thing with subtraction. Let's take a look at the next one here. The next one says 4,968. Well, gee, to me that is very close to 5,000, and 5,000 is an easy number to use. Anytime you've got numbers with zeros, they're easy to use. Now this one right here is 354, and it's in between 300 and 400. It's just a little bit closer to 400. So we're going to subtract 400 right here. Okay, that's a 4. All right, so then if we take this right here, 5,000 minus 400 would be 4,600. I'll write that right here. That's my estimate. And then it says to use a calculator to find the correct answer. Okay, and the correct answer, the actual answer was 4,614. So we were very close on that one, weren't we? Okay, the next one right here says to use rounding and front-end estimation to see which one is more accurate. Okay, so in the book earlier, they told you that to round to the nearest 100, okay? Well, here we have a 3 in the hundreds place, and here we have a 7 in the hundreds place. So that's the number we're going to use to round. This 3 could either stay a 3 or become a 4. We look to the right and there's a 0, okay? So it's closer to 300 than it is to 400, okay? And then we put the 8 in front, the 8,000 right here. So you got 8,300. Over here, this 789, it could either stay a 7 or become an 8. Well, 789 is closer to 800 than it is to 700, so we're going to make this an 8 and 800, and we're going to make that a 2 right there, so 2,800. Okay, so now we can subtract these two. All right, so 8,300 take away 2,800 is 5,500. Okay, 5,500. All right, well, now let me get my eraser up here. We're going to erase this right here. And it says now do it by front-end estimation, which I think is a lot easier. And if I were you, this is the one that I would do right here. And 8,300, we're just going to look at the very first number this time. And 8,300 is very close to 8,000. And 2,789 is close to 3,000. Okay, 8,000 take away 3,000 is 5,000, right? Okay, well, let's take a look at what the actual answer was 5,514. And so, yeah, the rounding wins most of the time. It takes more work, but it's more accurate. Front-end estimation is easier. It's less accurate, but you can get it done faster. Okay, kids, right now you're learning how to estimate sums and differences. Okay, well, today in class we're working on these two pages. Oh, got to write it up here. This is page 61, and this is student practice page 9. Okay, and on the Friday quiz this week, you're going to see this right here. It asks you to estimate these two numbers right here. Here's an addition problem. Here's a subtraction problem. Okay, well, let's do this together. I'm going to get you started on it. All right, and it says this right here: 12,258 plus 14,926. And here we go. I'm going to call this 12,258. I'm going to call it 12,000 because it's closer to that than 13,000. Plus 14,926. I'm going to call that 15,000. And then you just got to add them together, okay? You got to figure out 12 plus 15, and then it's going to be thousands, right? Okay, over on this one right here, it says 5,246, take away 392. And this one right here, I would once again just call this one 5,000. Call this one right here 400. I think we just did this one. Okay. And then 5,000 take away 400. Okay, you can figure that one out, right? Okay, well, kids, there you go. That's the lesson for today. Go ahead and give it a try. If you have any questions, come and see us. You can do this. All right, we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.